guys, welcome back. Today I'm here with another fantasy recommendation video. This is a series of videos that I'm doing. I love fantasy, I read a lot of fantasy. I thought it would be fun and hopefully helpful to provide a curated series of fantasy recommendations. There is a whole series of these videos. If you guys want to check it out, I will link it up above. Today I'm here to recommend to you 11 of my favorite dark fantasy novels that often include morally gray characters. So if you were looking for dark, gritty, bloody fantasy that features morally gray characters or villains, then this is the video for you. The first book that I want to talk about is one that is showing up on several of these lists because I think it just fits a lot of these different categories. Again, I'm going to give my disclaimer. This is one of the darkest, grittiest fantasy novels I've ever read. I'm leaving a link up above to my full non-spoiler review of this book if you want to check it out if you're worried about content warnings, but it is a buzzworthy, well-written book. This is Black Leopard Red Wolf by Marlon James. This is being talked about as an African Game of Thrones. I'm not sure that's really the best description, but I do think this is brilliantly written literary fantasy. It goes a lot of very, very, very dark places, and the main character is definitely morally gray. I would say that the main theme of this book is violence enacted on people's bodies in all of the ways that that can happen by people in positions of power. So this includes things like slavery, rape, torture, lots and lots of things. There's like a lot of really intense content in this book, but it's very, very well crafted. If you were looking for a dark, gritty fantasy novel with morally gray characters, then Black Leopard Red Wolf might just be right up your alley. On a little bit of a lighter note, maybe, I'm going to recommend to you Imprison the Sky by A.C. Gauguin. This is book 2 in the Elemente series. They are companion novels. They are not direct sequels, but they do intersect with characters, and eventually their plot lines do come together. This book follows a main character who is a pirate who traffics in slaves, but is herself in some ways a slave as well. She's quite a complex, morally gray character. I think this is really, really well written. Highly recommend both books in the series. If you're looking for fantasy with a morally gray character, Prison in the Sky. Next, let's talk about a few of my favorite books with good villain backstories. As a Slytherin, I love a good villain backstory. My first recommendation for you is going to be Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. This is a YA retelling of Snow White that is the backstory of the evil queen set in ancient China. And it is quite dark for a young adult novel. I loved it. The main character, Shifeng, is like my Slytherin spirit animal, and this is her descent into darkness and into becoming the evil queen and how she became the evil queen. It's brilliant. I loved everything about it. It is part of a duology. The second book I have not read yet, but I do want to. It is the Snow White part of the story, but this is the villain backstory. So if you're looking for a dark villain backstory, I'm going to recommend Forest of a Thousand Lanterns by Julie C. Dow. My next recommendation for you is a series that I think has been underappreciated, maybe because there's not always a lot of crossover between the more popular of this author's series and the readers who would be into this book, but this is The Young Elites by Marie Lu. It is a trilogy. She has also written some science fiction books which have been really, really popular, and I think some of the people that like the sci-fi were expecting something similar here and didn't get it and didn't love it, but I am a huge fan. If you like villain backstories, this is the series for you. I had already been into it, but then I was completely sold on this book when I read that Marie Lu posted that her inspiration for this series was the idea of doing a gender-flipped Darth Vader type backstory. So we're following a female main character descending into darkness, Darth Vader style, in a diverse fantasy world, and I loved it. So yeah, big fan, love villain backstories. This is a great series. And my final recommendation in this little mini category of villain backstories is, I think, maybe one of the least appreciated books in a very, very popular series. This is Fairest by Marissa Meyer. It is a prequel novella to the Lunar Chronicles series, and it is the backstory of Queen Lavanna, how she became what she is, the villain that she is today. I found it incredibly compelling. I absolutely loved it. This was probably my favorite book in the whole series, again, because I really love villain backstories, and I think this one is really well told. It's emotionally compelling. You see why she becomes as dark as she is. I'm a fan. Go read it. Moving on to some other darker fantasy that I really loved, I'm going to recommend a shorter book. This could almost be called a novella. It is The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Guys, this is really, really good, but it's not for everybody because it's kind of weird and not everyone likes weird books, but apparently I like really do a lot of the time. This one actually follows a younger child, but it's not really written for children. There's something about this though that to me recalled what it was like to be a child and to experience dark things. I don't know how, but I felt like he captured my experience of that perfectly. I mean, not that I went through the same things that the main character in the story does, but it's kind of this blend of a character going through really bad things in his real life and that blending into a dark fantasy world where bad things are happening as well. Yeah, like I said, it's not for everyone, but I loved it. Speaking of books that are polarizing, that not everybody likes, let's talk about The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert. This I thought was an incredibly impressive debut novel. It has been marketed as young adult, but I think this easily could have been marketed as adult instead, even though the main character is like 17 or 18. It reads like a darker adult fantasy. People seem to either love or hate this book. I absolutely loved it. Reasons that some people might not be a fan. The main character is an unlikable female main character. I don't really have a problem with that. I don't need my characters to be likable or nice or always make good choices. I'm kind of okay with her being a jerk. It doesn't bother me. I liked her, so it's fine. Some people don't like that so much, especially in their YA fantasy, so be aware that that's here. The other thing about this is that this is really a genre blend in a lot of ways. The first part of the book feels like an urban fantasy story, and the second part of it is a portal fantasy with kind of a weird fever dream-like quality, which again, not everybody is into one or both of those portions of it. I liked all of it. I'm a fan. Next is a book that I gave 4 stars to. It wasn't perfect, but I think it does some really interesting things, and it does go some quite dark places. This is Ash Princess by Laura Sebastian. It is another debut YA fantasy novel, and while it follows a trope that we've seen before of a princess who's trying to get her kingdom back and save her people, this goes some pretty dark places in terms of the things that she goes through, the torture and just like emotional degradation, and like there's a lot. It gets pretty dark for a YA fantasy novel, but I really liked it. I thought it was good. I'm very curious to see where the rest of the series goes, so I'm excited to pick up the sequel, Lady Smoke, sometime fairly soon. My next recommendation, if you're looking for a dark fantasy series, is 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. I love this series so much with all of my heart. I think it is fantastic. This is about 3 sisters who, when they turn 16 years old, must compete for the throne by killing each other, and the last one alive gets the crown. And there's magic. It's great. I love it. Next is a book that I think is really underhyped and underappreciated that I keep trying to push on people because I love it so much. This is Berserker by Emmy Laybourne. This is like a violent Little House on the Prairie meets Norse mythology, which sounds weird, but it totally works and it's hella good. So go check it out, Berserker. I am hoping to pick up Ransacker, the sequel to this, pretty soon, but I love this and more people should go read it. All right, and my final recommendation for you today is definitely dark fantasy. I'm sure you've seen this one before. I don't own the first book. I really need to get a copy. It's like on my wish list. But guys, this is The Nevernight Chronicles by J. Kristoff. This is book 2. Book 1 is Nevernight. Book 2 is God's Grave. I'm super excited for the final book, Dark Dawn, coming out later. Yes, I have it pre-ordered. Yeah, this is really good. If you want dark, violent adult fantasy, this is about a young woman who joins a religious faction of assassins in order to avenge her family's deaths. It's got lots of violence. It also has explicit sexual content in it. It's brilliant. I love J. Kristoff's writing style. I love his sense of humor too. It's like dark and snarky, and it really, really works for me. Yeah, I'm a fan. So if you're looking for dark fantasy, go check it out, guys. All right, so those are all of the recommendations that I have for you guys today. I know there are other books out there if you're looking for dark fantasy options. Again, this is a blend of adult and YA. Talk to me in the comments down below and let me know your thoughts on the list that I put together of books that I loved from my bookshelves, and tell me any of your recommendations. So question of the day is, recommend to me a book that you think I should pick up that is dark fantasy with morally gray characters, because clearly I'm into them. Finally, if you have other videos that you would like to see in this series of fantasy recommendations, let me know in the comments down below and I might add it to my list of videos to make. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.